Disney's 2025 live-action remake of Snow White has officially landed, and let's just get straight to the point. Audiences absolutely hate it. No sugarcoating, no diplomatic framing. The film is being torn apart by viewers online, and for good reason. This is not some niche backlash from a handful of cranky internet critics. We're talking about a widespread outpouring of frustration, disappointment, and even disgust from people who actually sat through this disaster of a film. If you take a look at the IMDb user reviews, it's like a graveyard of crushed childhood memories and wasted expectations. People are mad, and frankly, they have every right to be. Let's rewind a bit. The original Snow White from 1937 is one of the most iconic and beloved animated films of all time. It was the first full-length animated feature in history, a monumental achievement that set the tone for everything Disney would build in the decades to come. It's not just a classic, it's a piece of cinematic history. So when Disney announced they were remaking it in live action, people were skeptical but curious. Could they do it justice? Would they honor the legacy? The answer, it turns out, is a resounding no, not even close. What we got instead is a hollow, awkward, poorly executed mess that strips the original of everything that made it special and replaces it with pandering, preachy nonsense that nobody asked for. From the moment the first trailers were released, this film felt like a ticking time bomb. Casting decisions were controversial, dialogue sounded off, the tone was strange. And then, of course, there was the now infamous PR nightmare with the lead actress, Rachel Zegler, who managed to alienate a massive chunk of the fan base before the movie even premiered. Audiences weren't just wary, they were actively dreading what this film would do to their childhoods, and unfortunately, their fears were more than justified. User reviews on IMDb read like a collective sigh of rage. Unwatchable, says one viewer. Embarrassingly bad, writes another. One reviewer went so far as to call it an insult to cinema, which might sound harsh until you actually see what Disney did with the source material. The script is lifeless. The pacing is a nightmare. The CGI looks cheap and unfinished. And the acting? Forget it. Whatever charm or heart was supposed to come through in the performances is completely absent. Rachel Zegler's Snow White is cold, smug, and utterly devoid of the warmth or innocence the character is supposed to embody. It's not just a bad performance, it's a complete misreading of the role. One of the most common complaints is how far this film strays from the original story, and we're not just talking about a few creative liberties here and there. The entire tone and message of the film have been gutted and reassembled into something totally unrecognizable. The evil queen is barely menacing. The dwarfs have been replaced with a bizarre, almost surreal group of background characters. The romance is non-existent. The songs have been butchered. What we're left with is a film that looks and feels like it was written by people who not only didn't care about the original, but actively resented it. Many viewers felt that the film was more interested in pushing a modern political agenda than telling a compelling story. One review summed it up perfectly. If you hate fairy tales, you'll love this movie. The film seems almost allergic to fantasy, whimsy, or charm. Instead, it bombards viewers with forced empowerment speeches and empty dialogue that feel like they were ripped straight from a corporate diversity seminar. There's no magic, no sense of wonder, and no joy. It's a grim, self-serious slog that forgets it's supposed to be for children. Another reviewer hit the nail on the head. Disney doesn't respect its own legacy anymore. That's the core of the outrage. This isn't just about one bad movie. This is about a studio that seems determined to cannibalize its own classics for short-term cash grabs, no matter the cost. They're not just remaking these films, they're replacing them. And the replacements are, more often than not, significantly worse in every conceivable way. The live-action Snow White isn't a tribute to the original. It's a slap in the face to everyone who grew up loving it. Even the visual elements, which you would expect Disney to at least get right, are shockingly bad. The set design looks like a theater backdrop. The costumes feel like cosplay. The CGI animals are stiff and uncanny. There's not a single moment in the entire film that captures the visual elegance or fairy tale beauty of the 1937 classic. It's all so flat and lifeless, like watching a stage rehearsal instead of a finished movie. Some defenders of the film claim it's just for kids, and that adults are overreacting. But that excuse doesn't hold water. Disney's best films have always been multi-generational. They're supposed to work for children and adults alike. This remake doesn't even work for kids. It's boring, confusing, and devoid of fun. Children don't care about empowerment slogans. They want talking animals, memorable songs, and magical adventures. This film gives them none of that. What's even more frustrating is that Disney clearly had the resources to do something great. They had the money, the talent pool, and the brand recognition. But what they lacked was respect. Respect for the story, respect for the audience, and respect for the legacy. Instead of treating Snow White as a treasure to preserve, they treated it like a vehicle to push shallow modern branding. The result is not just a bad movie. It's a cautionary tale about what happens when corporate arrogance replaces creative vision. Sure, a few reviews gave the film a pat on the back. One user gave it a 9 out of 10 and praised the bravery of its new direction. Another called it fun and inspiring for young girls. But even these positive reviews admitted that the film wouldn't appeal to fans of the original. That's the key problem. This remake was never meant for the people who actually love Snow White. It was made for a demographic that doesn't exist, a hypothetical audience that cares more about messaging than storytelling. And judging by the reaction, even that audience didn't show up. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with a $200 million lesson in how not to remake a classic. It leaves us with yet another embarrassing entry in Disney's growing library of soulless reboots. And most of all, it leaves audiences angry. Angry that something so cherished could be turned into something so empty. Angry that a studio with infinite resources continues to churn out mediocrity. Angry that we're watching the slow death of one of the most iconic brands in entertainment. Snow White 2025 didn't just miss the mark. It burned the target to the ground and walked away smugly, expecting applause. But audiences aren't clapping. They're booing, loudly. And if Disney is paying attention, they might finally realize that nostalgia isn't enough. People want heart. They want care. They want to feel like the people making these films actually give a damn. Snow White 2025 is what happens when they don't. Let this be a wake-up call. Not just for Disney, but for every studio out there trying to ride the remake train without doing the work. You can't fake magic. You can't manufacture heart. And you sure as hell can't disrespect your audience and expect them to thank you for it. Snow White deserved better. We all did. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe. And thank you for watching.